First, I'm disconnecting the negative battery cable, which is corroded. I'll clean mine with a wire brush before detaching it. Next, I'll remove the transmission upper dipstick tube. I'll remove the bolt, then lift and twist it gently. The splash shield comes off next, which gives me access to the brake line brackets. I found it easier to remove this bolt from under the truck. After removing the outer bracket bolt, I'll move the brake line back and hold it there with a zip tie. Now the power supply connection cover can come off, followed by the nut and supply wire. The trigger wire to the starter is difficult to reach, so I'll detach it as I'm removing it. The starter bolts are here. I'll remove both bolts from underneath, but I found it easier to break the upper bolt loose through the wheel well. Once the bolts are detached, I'll swing the back of the starter outwards, then invert it and pull it out through the wheel well. Okay guys, so now I've got the nip and Denso starter out of my 1996 Toyota 4Runner, and I've gone ahead and cleaned it up there and everything, and as you saw from the pictures, I had a bit of an oil leak on the truck, and turns out that the valve cover gaskets were leaking, and one of the things I know from experience was that those valve cover bolts on the 3.4 seem to have a tendency to come loose over time. And sure enough, mine were very loose. So what I did before I took the starter out is resolve that oil leak. And here's why. When oil runs down into the solenoid and everything, guys, it actually follows the contacts that I'm getting ready to replace. And as a matter of fact, you can't really see it, but that label right there, it's been clean. Unfortunately, you can't see it, but it says remanufactured for Toyota. Now, this is absolute perfect example of what I'm talking about. My truck has 209,000 miles. The starter has already been replaced once. I know from the history of the truck, a lot of that work was done at a Toyota dealership in Virginia, Manassas, Virginia. So at any rate, oil leaks, fluid leaks into your starter will burn up your new contacts, and you'll wind up doing this again. So go ahead and resolve any oil leaks or any fluid leaks that are contaminating the starter before you go ahead with this job. Now let me take it apart and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. You want to be careful when you're removing the cover to try to keep the seal intact. Oh, those are crispy. Folks, take a look at these contacts right here. They are all burned up. Now, this is actually a component of two things here. This is a component of normal wear to start with. I don't want to mislead anyone here and say that it's just oil leaking down into your starter that will cause this problem. It's actually can be a combination of factors. I mean, this truck has 209,000 miles. I know the starter's been replaced once. If we divide that in half, that's about 104,000 miles on a starter. So, at any rate, if you look down inside of here, these are your contacts, right here, and then right here. If you look very closely, you can see a corresponding wear groove on there and there. Look inside of here. I mean, there's not a lot of oil in there, but there is some, and you can see it on my finger there. So at any rate, these contacts are junk. They're going to have to be replaced, and I hope I have the right ones. Here's a tip for you. Take the components that you removed and put them back on the stud. I'm starting first with the O-ring, followed by the base, then the washer. I'm then going to install both nuts. All of these items are put onto the stud in the order in which they were removed so I can keep track of them. Let's take a look at that contact. Look at the wear groove cut into the contact surface. See that little spot right there? That's all the electrical contact that was being made to try to start my truck. To help you visualize it better, let me tell you about what I'm taking off here. That's the base, and that right there is the O-ring. Now the contact and the stud slide right out. Look at the wear groove in that. It's no wonder the truck would barely start. Well, I just got back from Chode Auto Electric in Springfield, Missouri, and I managed to get the right contact that I need now. So I'm going to go ahead and install these, keeping all of the fasteners and all of the accessories in order the way I take them off. One of the things I'm trying to do here, folks, is make sure that when I bolt this down, that this contact is flat up against the surface on the back here that it rests. If that thing's not flat on there, it could go in there crooked, and if it gets crooked, it's only going to catch the contact on one side or the other, whichever side is higher, and that can lead to problems down the road. Okay. Take a second or two to get that lined up and get it where it needs to be. There's an O-ring that goes over the bolt first, and then we have the hookup or we have the base for the power wire. You guys see that there's a seal right here on this base. You don't want to lose that. Also has this key right here, and that key is right here in the side of the starter. Next, the washer goes on, and now finally, the retaining nut. I'm not going to turn this down all the way just yet, because I want to make sure when I bolt this down, that contact is flat. I'm going to allow myself whatever room I need here to ensure this happens. So what I'm going to do is just hold it down with my fingers, pull the bolt towards. Okay, that's nice and flat. Now I'll tighten the nut. Before I tighten it all the way, I'm going to check and make sure that it's flat up against that. Need to change that just slightly. There we go. We don't necessarily need a lot of torque here, folks. Just enough to hold everything in place. Right there it is. Nice and flat on both sides of the back. Now I can move to the other side. Have to remember, I have this electrical contact in here, so it's a good idea to take a look at that and make sure it's clean. This one's nice and clean, it's okay. And that contact looks good too. Okay, so now with that done, actually gets the same treatment over here, guys. Got an O-ring. Then the base. Next I'll install the washer and then the first nut. Also making sure that the contacts are flat against the surface here that they rest on. Notice how I'm pressing down on the contact as I'm tightening it. That's simply because I want to make sure that it stays flush with the surface on it that it's sitting on. Okay, that's plenty of torque. So now, everything looks good. Okay. Go Last part of the equation here, folks, is this plunger. Now, there seems to be some disagreement on whether or not this plunger should be lubricated right here on this tip. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit on there, guys, but I'll tell you, if you use too much grease, you could very well, the contacts could very well be ruined by using too much grease. So I'm just going to put a little bit on here, guys. I'm not going to put a lot. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to slide this with the spring. We have to install the spring. I'm going to slide this with the spring into the bore. And I'm going to make sure that the contacts line up. And the contacts do line up. Now we can see that the plunger moves nice and free. You can also see that when the plunger drops, it's making contact with those contacts. That's why we've got to keep them flat, so we can make sure we have full contact on the plunger contact down here and the contact on the starter itself. So with that all said and done, she should be good to go here. So the last and final thing here is to reinstall the dust cover. I'm going to go ahead and reinstall it the same way I took it off. Just like that right there. And just like this. Alright. Now, last but not least, I'll install the wire for the motor itself. There she is. Throw that cover back down. And that right there is how you install contacts in the Nipendenso starter. Now guys, this is out of a 1996 4Runner, but the Nipendenso starter is used in all kinds of different vehicles. The Chrysler uses them. I think even General Motors uses some. Some of the European models also use a similar starter to this. But one more thing I'm going to do here before I call this good. I'd like to make this as easy as possible to get back in. The way you're seeing this oriented here is actually how it goes in the vehicle. This is down, this is up. So one of the things I'm going to do to help speed along the reassembly, I'm going to take my bolt here. I'm going to run it in and out of the hole. The reason I'm doing this is this will help me to get this bolt started. If you remember the picture that I showed you of breaking the bolt loose through the wheel well to start the bolt. Once the starter is in place, I should be able to just hold the starter kind of in there, sneak this bolt around the back of the exhaust, and slide that sucker right on in there and start it by hand. And that one's a little bit rough, so I'm going to take a little bit of this grease here that I have. Let's throw a little bit of that in here, and let's see if that helps things along. What I'd really like to be able to do is get this bolt where I can thread it in most, if not all, of the way with my fingers, and then just simply tighten it up with the ratchet with the bottom bolt, guys, just to make things a little bit easier to get in there. So that's actually running in there really nice now. Okay. Well, as far as putting it back together goes, the installation is the reverse of the removal. You will find it much easier to hook up your trigger wire. It just pushes in and snaps in. Problem with taking it off is you have to get to that snap. It's a little bit difficult to get to, so like I showed you in the pictures, I took the starter out, got it started on its way out, and then undid this. Let's try it out.